Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Now, Madam President, last week was an exceedingly productive week for the Senate. We funded the government, passed postal reform, kept our promise to the Ukrainian people, revived VAWA, and unanimously passed anti-lynching legislation. President Biden's going to be busy this week signing a lot of bipartisan bills into law that will impact the lives of millions of Americans. And I thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their good work. Today, we're picking up right where we left off, confirming more of the President's nominees, maintaining our laser focus on lowering costs for American families, and continuing to explore how we can help Ukraine in their war against the evil Mr. Putin. First, on this last point, earlier today, the Speaker and I announced that President Zelensky will deliver a virtual address to members of the House and Senate this Wednesday, March 16th at 9 a.m. As you know, Madam President, it is one of the highest honors of any Congress to welcome remarks by foreign heads of state. But it is nearly unheard of in modern times that we hear from a leader fighting for his life, fighting for his country's survival, fighting to preserve the very idea of democracy. So let me say that again. It's one of the highest honors of any Congress to welcome remarks by foreign heads of state. But it is nearly unheard of in modern times that we hear from a leader fighting for his life, fighting for his country's survival, and fighting to preserve the idea of democracy, something Americans cherish. As war intensifies in Ukraine, we have all been inspired by the courage of President Zelensky and that of the Ukrainian people. President Zelensky can rest assured that he will always have friends in Congress ready to listen, to stand in his corner, and we're honored to have him speak to us later this week. Now on nominations. As we continue exploring ways to help the people of Ukraine, the Senate will also move forward on nominations. Later today, we're scheduled to vote to proceed on the nomination of Shalanda Young, President Biden's choice to lead the Office of Management and Budget. For the last year, Ms. Young has already been doing the work of leading OMB as acting director, and she's proven to be bipartisan, deeply experienced, and knows the budget and appropriation process like the back of her hand. She was an amazing budget director for the Appropriations Committee in the House and has been an amazing acting director, and she'll do great as director of OMB. It's time we make her appointment here official here in the Senate, and I hope to see members from both sides of the aisle rally behind her later this week. If confirmed, Shalanda Young would make history as the very first black woman confirmed by the Senate to lead the OMB, another glass ceiling shattered by a remarkable member of the President's historic cabinet. It's been under Ms. Young's leadership that the OMB has notched some of the administration's biggest accomplishments, from securing billions in disaster relief funding, beefing up the Made in America office, to working with Congress on the bipartisan infrastructure law. Clinton, Louisiana, can celebrate this week, knowing that one of their own is bringing the administration's agenda to life. I look forward to seeing this great nominee confirmed later this week. Now on costs and inflation. Off the floor, Senate Democrats will continue this week focusing on helping American families lower their cost of living and reap the full benefits of the historic job and wage growth under President Biden. Later this week, my colleagues on the Senate Finance Committee will hold an especially important hearing on the rising costs of prescription drugs and hear expert testimony on what we can do to make medications more affordable. Lowering prescription drug prices should be absolutely one of the most bipartisan priorities in this Congress. Few things ignite the same frustration as making trips to the pharmacy and seeing the price on your receipt go up and up and up for basic, often life-saving medications. Insulin is a particularly egregious example. According to some sources, a 40-day supply can now climb north of $600 a month. For millions of Americans who rely on insulin to manage their diabetes, this is a 5-alarm fire that demands Senate action. I expect we'll consider next steps soon on some proposals already presented by my colleagues. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats will continue examining the disturbing trend of corporations reporting massive profits, even as Americans face higher costs. A headline from Yahoo News last month sums it up. Quote, corporate America's 2021 profits were higher than ever. Let me repeat that. Corporate America's 2021 profits were higher than ever. It is deeply unfair and morally bankrupt for Americans to pay more for basics while many mega corporations are making a killing. Last week, I asked the head of the FTC to look into this trend in the area of energy prices, and corporations taking advantage of the American people should be on notice. On the Supreme Court, this week, members from both sides of the aisle will continue meeting with President Biden's nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. When President Biden nominated Judge Jackson, I promised that we'd have a fair and expeditious process, and that's exactly what we've had so far. Judge Jackson has now met with a broad range of senators from both sides of the aisle, and she's expected to meet with all members of the Judiciary Committee before her hearings begin next week. I'm encouraged that so far the judge's meetings with senators have been very constructive. From conversations with my colleagues, everyone seems to agree on one thing. The judge is more than qualified for the big job on the high court. Her record bears that out. As a district judge for 8 years, Judge Jackson rendered more than 550 rulings and was rarely reversed by higher courts. When Judge Jackson's hearings begin next week, the American people will see for themselves precisely what senators are seeing right now. Judge Jackson is brilliant, she is beloved, and she belongs on the Supreme Court, the 3 B's that I've given her. Brilliant, beloved, belongs. So I thank my colleagues for moving forward in a constructive way on this historic nomination. Now on the omnibus budget. I want to revisit the groundbreaking omnibus package that the Senate passed last week with bipartisan support, which fully and robustly funds the government through the end of the 2022 fiscal year. As I said on Thursday, this year's bipartisan budget bill is one of the boldest and most significant packages that we've seen pass through the Congress in a long, long time. It's a deal just overflowing with good news for American families looking to cut costs and make ends meet. Let me highlight just a few ways this bill will lower costs in the coming months. For working Americans struggling with energy costs, this year's budget increases domestic investments that help people pay for their heating and air conditioning bills. Utility costs have always fallen hardest on those least able to bear them. And I'm glad this year we are increasing the help we provide working families to pay for their utilities. We're also boosting funding for child nutrition programs by 7% compared to 2021. So kids don't go to school on an empty stomach or go through summer school uncertain about what or if they're going to eat. Working parents will also get a break. We're dramatically increasing the amount dedicated for child care assistance, making it easier for parents to re-enter the workplace and earn a paycheck without having to worry about paying to take care of their kids. Head Start programs will see more resources to help them prepare young kids thrive in the classroom. Funding for Title I-A grants, which help more than half our nation's public schools boost student performance, will receive the largest increase in a decade. College students, meanwhile, will see the largest increase in Pell Grant maximums since the 2009-10 academic year, a desperately needed injection of funding. These investments only scratch the surface. From housing assistance to help with energy costs to aid for the elderly and our veterans and investments in child nutrition, this year's funding package will drive down costs for parents, students, the elderly, small business. Because both sides were able to work in good faith, American families will see more help come their way through the annual funding bill than they've seen in a long, long time.